What I kind of advise, if you're like brand new, right,
Yep.
is to pick something that tends to be light, nothing fragile, and most importantly, you want to pick something where you can't really do a lot of easy comparison shopping. Like you can't just go out into a brick and mortar store and then find this object. It has to be something special and have a really good value proposition.
Welcome back to the Talking Web Marketing Podcast with myself, Ilana Wexler. This is a show where we reveal the best tips, tricks and tactics to increasing your website traffic and then converting that traffic into leads and sales. We also discuss what's working right now in the ever-changing world of web marketing so you can apply it to your business. Welcome back to another episode Talking Web Marketing. Today I'm interviewing a guest under the name of Steve Chou. Now you may have heard of Steve. I actually met him on a recent trip to Traffic and Conversion in San Diego. We actually kind of met at a booth, which is a different story in itself. Anyway, you might have heard of Steve because he's got a pretty successful podcast called My Wife Quit Her Job, where he talks about online business and his e-commerce store and lots of other topics related to entrepreneurship. So I've brought him on to today's episode to really talk about his ventures with his e-commerce store and importantly, the different models that you can apply with e-commerce and how he got started, which is actually a very interesting story, as well as how he generates traffic for his e-commerce store. So if you're brand new to e-commerce or even if you're seasoned, you will no doubt get a lot of value from today's episode. So let's get stuck in today's show. Welcome to Talking Web Marketing, Steve Chou. It's wonderful to have you on today's episode.
I am happy to be here.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We were just talking offline, and in my research for this podcast, I can see that you have a number of different ventures, but your main venture is with your e-commerce store, Bumblebee Linens. And I kind of wanted to bring you on today's episode to talk to you about that because it's no shock that e-commerce is not going anywhere anytime soon. So I want to talk around how you built Bumblebee Linens. You mentioned offline that you started up in 2007. So it's certainly been around for a really, really long time. So I want to sort of touch on how you chose your product selection for that and also how you start to generate the traffic for it. So are you happy to talk about that on today's show?
Yeah, absolutely. And, to be honest with you, we kind of just accidentally stumbled upon it. We sell handkerchiefs online, and it definitely wasn't my first choice. The way we stumbled upon that niche was when my wife and I got married, she knew she was going to cry at our wedding.
Aww.
And we paid all sorts of money for photography and that sort of thing. And she knew she was going to cry, and she didn't want to be in the photos using like a nasty tissue. She wanted a nice handkerchief embroidered with our name on it.
That's a really cool story.
Yeah, at the time, there was nothing in the U.S. We ended up finding this factory in China. We had to order a couple hundred of them. We ended up only using 6, and then we got rid of the rest on eBay. And I remember they just sold like hotcakes.
Wow, that's very cool. So you kind of, I guess, are not the traditional route of wanting to start an online business and then searching for a product. You were, I guess, a customer yourself before you started.
That's correct. We didn't actually start the store until 3 years after we got married. And that didn't happen until my wife became pregnant. And she wanted to stay at home with the kids. And we live in the Silicon Valley. You pretty much need 2 incomes to get a good house in a good school district. And so we started looking for different businesses and remembered that we sold handkerchiefs on eBay a long time ago. And that's when we decided to launch the store.
I understand. Okay. So I think, so many people these days have an e-commerce store, but what is often not really spoken about in the world of e-commerce is product selection.
Sure.
And I would imagine product selection really that hinges on the success of your e-commerce store, regardless of your traffic generating strategies or really anything like that. So do you have some thoughts around how, like, let's say you're starting out and you're looking to start an e-commerce store and you don't have a product? What are some kind of things that you look for in choosing a product?
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, we kind of stumbled upon our first niche, which is handkerchiefs, but every single product that we've released since then follows kind of like a set criteria. And I teach a class on this. And what I kind of advise, if you're like brand new, right,
Yep.
is to pick something that tends to be light, nothing fragile. And most importantly, you want to pick something where you can't really do a lot of easy comparison shopping. Like you can't just go out into a brick and mortar store and then find this object. It has to be something special and have a really good value proposition.
Okay, so it's not like a real price race to the bottom.
That's correct. And it also helps, it's not necessary, but it also helps if it's like a consumable product, because then people will come back on a regular basis to buy more of them.
Okay. And when you say small, like, is there a sort of a minimum or maximum size that you would
Yeah, I
recommend?
generally say if you can fit in a shoebox. And the only reason for that is, Amazon has really taken off in the last 5 years or so. And Amazon has an oversized product requirement where if you go above a certain size, the costs of storing that item go up tremendously.
Interesting. Okay. And also fragile, I guess, sort of, what's that, like things out of glass?
Yeah, I mean, things break in the mail, and even though it might not be your fault, you are, as a business, liable for it. So it just makes things a whole lot easier.
I understand. Okay. What about seasonality of products? So let's say like Halloween products. Do you kind of avoid things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I generally don't like it when all of your revenue comes on like 1 or 2 days out of the year. So yeah,
Yes.
Halloween falls into that category. In general, if you're going to launch a store rather than like just like a single product, it's actually better if you buy products that have demand that covers you throughout the entire year. So for example, in our store, our handkerchiefs are mainly purchased during the wedding season. But then as soon as the wedding season ends, we have napkins and towels and other items that are more for the holiday season. And so we kind of have an even demand all throughout the year.
And I would also imagine, me being in Australia, our wedding season is the opposite of your wedding season. So there's potential to capture other wedding seasons around the world, maybe?
That's correct. Yes. If you ship internationally, absolutely.
Right. Okay. What about price range of the actual item? Mike, do you have any thoughts on?
Yeah, I would say anything under $200 tends to be like an impulse buy, and 200 US dollars, I guess, tends to be an impulse buy online.
Okay. And what about a minimum price range? Being a PPC person, I'm always mindful that I want to be able to buy a
Yeah.
customer.
Well, okay, so in terms of, let's talk about Amazon, I'd recommend at least like $20 to $25. If you're going to be buying ads, your average order size preferably be above $50, I would say. So if you have cheaper items, you can bundle them together and maybe create some sort of higher priced item. What are your guidelines, just curious, for PPC in terms of average order size?
See, it's a tough one because it's all about the margin, right?
Assume like, 60% margins.
Look, in my experience, and as also it depends on if it's a one-off product versus a recurring item. But in my experience, it always costs more than you think to buy a customer. I have had customers or clients come to me and they're trying to sell a $5 product, and that's the top line revenue versus their margin. And it's just not going to happen. And with no remarketing list and no database. So I usually am the bearer of bad news. I'm sorry, I don't think paid traffic is going to be profitable on the front end unless you've got some kind of back end, or unless you can bundle a few products together to boost the order size and therefore margin. Selling individual products like that, in my opinion, is just, it's a loss leader. I guess if you can make it back, then it's a different conversation. But if you can't make it back, then I would say not to do it, which is a little bit controversial because there's so much talk around PPC for e-commerce products. But I think that is a piece of the puzzle that people don't really consider when they're starting an e-commerce store.
Absolutely.
What about sourcing your products? I would imagine this is a real sticking point for people and a hurdle that people kind of struggle to get over. What would you say are the best ways to source a product?
I mean, there's different ways to source a product. Like one model is to drop ship, and that's basically where you take orders and someone else fulfills your orders. You can do the traditional wholesale method where you contact, popular brands, get a hold of their distributors, and then hold inventory. Or you can actually have your products manufactured with your own brand and sell them as your own. And that actually is the way that I recommend because, you're in full control of your brand. You're actually developing some intellectual property that you own.
Okay. And that's what you guys do with the Bumblebee?
And that's what we do, yes. That's correct.
Interesting. So how did you find that original sourcing company?
That original sourcing company was just found on Google. And
Right.
traditionally, factories don't even have a web page or whatnot. It turns out this first vendor of ours actually wasn't a factory. It ended up being like a trading company. And the best way to find factories, of course, to go to China, or these days you can use Alibaba, but we like to just go to China and go to like the Canton Fair.
So can you tell me a little bit about the Canton Fair?
Yeah, basically, it is a fair that occurs twice a year. It has 3 phases, and
Twice a year.
all of these Asian vendors congregate in this place in Canton, and you can pretty much hit like hundreds and hundreds of vendors in the course of, several days. It's really speeds things up.
So you would go there to source your product and create a arrangement with a vendor, is that right?
That's correct, yes.
And then let's say you go to Canton Fair and you find a product and you go, yep, this is what I'm going to do. The next step for somebody, as I understand, is a Shopify store where they're in charge of their own traffic, or Amazon.
These days, so when you first come up with a product, you never know if it's going to do well until you actually try to sell it, right?
Of course.
And so I actually advise that people start out on Amazon. Amazon already has a built-in marketplace, a lot of customers, and sell it on there at first. And if it gets some traction, then work on your store.
Okay. So the whole Amazon FBA model, do that first.
That's correct, yes.
So send the Canton products to Amazon warehouse and they will do it for you.
That's correct. I mean, you should obviously take a look at them, inspect them, and that sort of thing in the beginning. And then, once your supply chain is all set up, then you can ship stuff directly to Amazon's warehouse.
I see. Okay, so let's say you go down that route, start selling, you start your own Shopify store. In your experience, what are some of the best ways you can start to make those initial sales online? You mentioned before we hit record that you started with Google AdWords. Do you still recommend that?
Yeah, I think it really depends on what you try to sell. If something that you're selling is widely searched for online, then, something like Google AdWords will work. Google Shopping will also work. In fact, I think Google Shopping, if I haven't looked at my AdWords account in a little bit, but I believe Google Shopping is our highest earner right now, followed by just regular keyword ads. And we also run dynamic retargeting on Google as well.
Yeah.
That converts well.
Do you do much on the Google Display Network?
Only the retargeting.
Only the retargeting. Mm-hmm. I would say that's probably an area of opportunity for you, maybe.
It perhaps is, and I've actually tried it in the past, and I think it requires a lot more spend just to figure out what works and what doesn't. And at the time, I was just hemorrhaging money, and I decided to stop.
Yeah. I mean, here's a suggestion for you. Maybe you could look at the converting placements in your remarketing campaign and make them a direct placements campaign for all the traffic. We find that works well for our clients. Did you try that?
I tried targeting individual pages
Yes.
that were talking about the products that we sell. And we had, some marginal success there. But those individual pages actually didn't end up scaling. I've given a lot more effort on Facebook because it's been easier.
Right.
Even though the Google Display Network is infinitely larger.
Yes, it is. But, there's such different platforms as you and I both know. But I think where Facebook really is superior for e-commerce is the fact that people can tag a friend or share it. I mean, that virality aspect of Facebook is just such an amazing advertising opportunity.
And then the audience targeting is just so much better,
I know.
in my opinion, too.
And their lookalike audiences are fantastic.
Yeah, exactly.
So starting out, you would recommend PPC, but then sort of once you start getting some traction, what are some strategies that you use to boost sales and traffic volume?
Yeah, I mean, here's what we did with our store. When we first started out, we did a lot of content marketing. So we started writing articles that would help would-be brides with their weddings, craft projects involving the products that we sell. And one thing we also did is we noticed that certain people were buying a large volume of our products. And so we started calling these people, and it turns out that a lot of the people buying our products were event and wedding planners. And so we got a hold of them, and we basically offer them like a dedicated rep and coupons if they wanted to purchase from us going forward. And after that, soon after that, whenever there's like a large order that comes in, we kind of put them on this list so that we can contact them. And so today, a decent sized portion of our business is actually B2B as well.
Right.
So we have the 3-prong attack. We have PPC, we have content marketing, which brings in organic traffic, and then we have the B2B aspect.
Interesting. So I met you at Traffic and Conversion recently, and there was a lot of talk at the conference about Facebook Messenger bots, etc. Have you kind of experimented with some of the latest tactics that are going on?
Yeah, I've been experimenting it for several months now, and it's been working almost too well to the point where I feel like things are going to, once people start adopting it more, I'm sure it won't perform as well. It just kind of reminds me of how email was 10 years ago when I first got started. I would send out an email and I would get like 30-40% open rates and like 10% click-through rates. With bots and Messenger, I'm getting like 90% open rates, 40% click-through rates, and right now it's just pretty insane.
So can you, for those of you who are listening and don't really know the first thing about bots or how to get started, can you kind of talk us through a little bit how you started with it and I guess recommendations on how you would start?
Yeah, I mean, the simplest thing that we did just to kind of get started was to implement like a live chat bot.
Yep.
And so basically, we've been running our business for a while and we know what the frequently asked questions are. And so it's just a matter of putting together a live chat bot that answers those questions. And so the tool that I use is called ManyChat, and you can actually have it recognize certain keywords and questions. And if someone types in a question that uses those keywords, you have a canned answer that answers that. And so, for example, in our store, it's like, where's my order? Or how long is it going to take to fulfill my order? How can I check up on my order? And so we have buttons for these. So if you click on one, you can instantly check up on your order. Like if you type in your email address and your order number, and do you sell internationally? Do you sell wholesale? All these questions are kind of encapsulated into this database that we've created.
Cool. So people, if I understand correctly, people were already messaging you through the page. You've just implemented a bot to respond to them. Is that right?
So we actually had a regular chat before, but we implemented the Facebook Messenger version because anytime someone interacts with you, they instantly become a subscriber, and then you can contact them going forward.
So you were generating subscribers purely by people initiating that chat, and then
That's correct.
Once they've become a subscriber, were you then sending broadcasts to them as well through Messenger?
That's correct. Yes, that's correct.
Okay. With an offer or just more saying, confirming we've got your order?
Yeah, it's so funny. I was just talking with Mikhail of ManyChat, and it turns out I'd been doing something that was in a gray area. So I had been sending broadcasts saying, hey, we just got a new shipment of new product. Would you like to see them? Yes, no, unsubscribe. Then, once they said yes, we gave them a coupon code to go shop in our store. And that actually converted really well. Turns out that that's kind of like a gray area because you're talking about product. If you want to be absolute white hat, you should give them some piece of content. So for example, going forward, I might say, hey, we have a new arts and crafts project with our, for weddings. Would you be interested in seeing it? And then once they click yes, then you can give them a coupon code or something to shop on the store.
And do you have a sense of your unsubscribe rate when you do those broadcasts?
Yeah. So for our list right now, I'd been running Messenger ads to it with a free plus shipping offer. So let me just describe what that is.
Yep.
So we run an ad on Facebook where we give away a free handkerchief. And when they click on that ad, it goes into Messenger and it says, if you want to redeem this order, click on this button. And they click on a button, they go on our page, and we actually try to get an email address as well. And once they enter their email address, we give them a free handkerchief.
Nice.
So a lot of our live chat subscribers, our Messenger subscribers right now fall under that category. And so a lot of those people are just looking for free product. And so whenever I'm broadcasting to those people, my unsubscribe rate has been on the order of like 10%.
Right. And can you segment those people within ManyChat to see?
You can.
Okay.
Yes, you can.
Okay.
Yeah, you can tag them. You can segment them. You kind of have to plan ahead a little bit.
Yep.
Meaning like in a certain flow, you tag them if they do a certain action.
Okay.
But the people who opt in through the live chat widget on our site, the unsubscribe rate for those people are much less, like on the order of 1 to 2%.
Right. And how else are you promoting? Are you putting a link in your email saying you can talk with us on Facebook Messenger?
Yeah, so right now, the way we've been doing it, so we have a Facebook audience for people who have shopped on our store and haven't purchased in a while. That goes to a Messenger ad. We also occasionally blast deals on our email address, and we've been having a portion of those people go to Messenger to get the coupon as well. So it's just kind of a way to kind of move our email subscribers over to chat because the open rates are so much better.
And is there any way for somebody within Messenger to share that with other people, or it's just exclusively a one-to-one?
I think it's a one-to-one. Facebook is really, really strict about not spamming your Messenger subscribers.
Yeah.
I mean, there's certain rules, right? You can only send a promotional message within 24 hours after an interaction.
Really?
And outside of that, you have to send content. So
That might be a new development. I didn't know about that.
Oh, yeah. No, it's been a while. It's been there for a while, actually.
Oh, right. Yeah, good to know. I guess, what would you say are some tips with starting out with Messenger bots for e-commerce?
Yeah, I think at the very minimum, just implement like a live chat widget. It actually ends up reducing your support load as well, because you're answering the frequently asked questions. The next low-hanging fruit would be to just take your email list and try to move some of those people over to Messenger so that when you send out something, you're sending it out through email as well as chat, and you get a lot more interaction that way as well. So that's like low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, cool. I guess it's sort of a good starting point for people, and then obviously that's somewhere they can build on.
Yeah, absolutely. And then later on, you can try running ads to get message subscribers. And right now, not a whole lot of people are using them. So it's relatively inexpensive to get a Messenger subscriber.
Interesting. So you mentioned before that Messenger's working a little too well. Is that in terms of your stock availability? Like, what would you say are some recommendations for how much inventory someone should have at any one time?
You mean in terms of
like
scaling
Yeah, exactly. Like, understand, for e-commerce, it's a real sticking point for many e-commerce people that, they sell out of stock and then they got to get more, the next shipment in, they got to turn their ads off and they got to turn their ads back on, etc. It's this constant management of inventory.
Yeah, I mean, that's a hard question to answer just because every business is going to be different. Right now, the purpose of our ads that we run are actually to build up Messenger subscribers, which we then will use to generate more sales. And right now, we're just trying to break even on those ads because we know we can make up for it on the back end with Messenger and email.
So speaking of email, how often do you email your subscribers with offers versus content? It's this, as I know, it's like a balance between providing value and also, emailing offers.
So almost all of our email correspondence is automated. So the way we get them on the list is we have this Wheel of Fortune pop up. And if they give their email address, they get to spin this wheel to win valuable prizes in our shop. Cool. And after they get on that, it's like this, I want to say it's like a 4-month sequence where they're emailed like every week. And usually it's just content, but every now and then we sprinkle in a coupon code if they haven't made a purchase yet. But if they've made a purchase, they don't get any coupon codes and they just get the content. And if they've made a purchase, but they haven't made a purchase within a certain period, like let's say 60 days or so or 30 days, then we send out people a coupon. And if they haven't purchased, so we have different increments, right? 30, 60, 90 days. So if they haven't purchased in 30 days, we just send them like a small coupon. If they still haven't purchased within 60 days, we send them a larger coupon. And then finally, if they haven't purchased in 90 days, we give them an even larger coupon. So that's to get people kind of like back in the swing of shopping at our store. We have a post-purchase sequence that tries to get them to leave reviews and that sort of thing. We have another sequence that, if they're already on our list and they looked at a product, we'll send them an email telling them that it's running out of stock to just kind of get them to make a purchase. So I like keeping things a little bit more automated. And occasionally, we actually have someone who writes blog posts for our store blog as well. And occasionally, we will send out those posts just to the list as well.
Cool. And would you say the handkerchiefs are sort of a repeat purchase, really?
Yeah, so for the longest time, and this is really funny, for the longest time we thought that people were using these handkerchiefs just for weddings. And then I punched in our purchased audience into Facebook Audience Insights.
Yeah.
And that's when we discovered that a large percentage of our purchasers are aged 55 and above. Mm-hmm. And so these are actually people who collect handkerchiefs and really like buying handkerchiefs just because, it's an old school type of thing.
It is.
And I didn't realize that. And so I started using Facebook broad match dynamic product ads, just targeting people 55 and above. And so far that's been working pretty well.
I haven't talked about the dynamic product ads on the podcast before. Do you want to maybe just touch on what it is and how you've used it, just for those of you people listening?
Yeah, it was just a leap of faith. And I think it just came out within the last year and a half, I want to say, right?
Yeah.
It's basically where you allow Facebook to determine the targeting. It's like a blanket audience. So for us, we're just having Facebook target people 55 and above who are women and just letting Facebook decide who to show the ads to. And, you have to let it run for a little bit to kind of prime the pump and give Facebook enough conversion information. But after that, it ends up working pretty well. It's converting 2-to-1 right now on the top of funnel, brand new people, which is really good.
But I would say your Facebook pixel does need to be well and truly seasoned.
That's correct. Yes, that's correct.
You wouldn't do this with a brand new account.
That's correct. You wouldn't do it with a brand new account. So, if you have a brand new account, then you really need to just put together some sort of creative that really defines your unique value proposition. And usually what I try to do is I try to collect a message subscriber or an email subscriber when I run Facebook ads that way.
Yeah, nice. So you've kind of done so much in the handkerchief niche, or if I was American, I'd say niche. We say it differently. If you were starting from scratch, what kind of other e-commerce products would you also consider? Like you mentioned at the start of the episode, it's got to be small, it can't be breakable. Mm-hmm. Is there any other criteria that you would also factor in if you were starting from scratch?
Yeah, I mean, I can talk about, the criteria. I I don't want to comment on like specific products per
No,
se,
of
but I
course
can
not.
tell you the criteria that I would use. There's a whole bunch of tools right now out there that will tell you, how well certain products are selling on Amazon.
Oh, okay. What are some of those
And
tools?
like Jungle Scout,
Yep.
Viral Launch is another one. And, back when I got started, none of these tools were available. And, Amazon wasn't as huge either. But now it's really easy to get an idea of how well a certain product is selling, like in real life, right?
Yep.
And on the eBay side, there's a tool called TerraPeak that basically scrapes all the completed eBay listings. So you actually get exact sales numbers.
Wow.
So based on that information, you can use Jungle Scout and just kind of browse Amazon and see what is selling. And the way you can kind of judge competition is by looking at the number of reviews that a product has had.
Yep.
And in general, if a product has less than 100 reviews, then that means that listing is not well seasoned. And perhaps that is an area that you might want to go into because it's not that competitive.
Cool. Okay. Well, you've certainly covered a lot of information.
We've covered a lot of stuff on the surface. I mean, if you want to go any deeper in any of the topics, feel free.
What about some other tools? I guess, I really feel like product research is, success with your e-commerce store really, really hinges on your product ultimately. Like, yes, you can have really fancy marketing and fancy messenger bots and email marketing, but if you're trying to sell something that people don't want, then your job is infinitely more difficult. You also mentioned sort of differentiating your product somehow and sourcing it directly. I guess it's a creative process for people. Can you kind of provide some insights?
It doesn't have to be a creative process. Like a very simple way, like don't release a product that's already being sold. You always have to make it better in some way. And so an easy way to do that is to simply go on Amazon once you've figured out something that you want to sell and go look at like the 2 and 3 star reviews and see what people are complaining about it. So one example would be like this picnic blanket that we just bought. Right?
Yep.
We bought this picnic blanket and we took it outside. It was early in the morning, so the grass was a little bit wet, and it ended up making the picnic blanket all wet on the top. And so a simple way to combat that would be to just add a waterproof liner, for example. Or, if it's too thin, just make like an extra thick picnic blanket. Basically, look at the reviews and find ways to differentiate yourself.
As an e-commerce provider yourself, what are some ways that you really encourage people to leave reviews, since it's such a huge, having that social proof from others would help your own selling of your product? Yeah,
I mean, on Amazon, it's really tough now because Amazon has strict guidelines on the fact that you're not allowed to ask for a review in return for anything. So in Amazon land, basically, you just have to send out an email. And the way we usually do it is we pitch ourselves as a small family-owned business, and then we just ask for the feedback. With your store, however, you have a lot more freedom. So you can bribe them to leave a review for you.
To leave a review on Amazon or just...
No, not on Amazon, on your own site or any review service that is recognized by Google. So we actually don't bribe anyone, but we just say, if you've had a good experience with us, please leave a review, and we just make it very easy for them to do so. But certain other people, they'll give out coupon codes in return for a review. And what's nice is once your product has a sufficient number of reviews, it'll actually show up in Google with stars, which improves the click-through rate.
And sadly, Google are retiring their review extensions in your ads, which is a little disappointing. You also do a bunch of other stuff. You have a course that teaches people how to do exactly that. Where could people find out a little bit of information about that? Yeah, so the class that I offer is located at profitableonlinestore.com, but I also offer like a free day mini course that just kind of walks you through the basics of e-commerce, kind of like the stuff we discussed today. And so you can decide whether you want to even go into selling physical products online. And that is located over at mywifequitherjob.com/free. And you can just sign up easily there. Awesome. Well, you have been a wealth of information. Thank you so much for coming on today's show and sharing your amazing insights and expertise. It's been a pleasure having you on. And yeah, I guess those 2 places are where people can find out more information about you. So,
and one more thing, like if any of you guys are getting married, my online store is over at bumblebeelinens.com. Come on over, we'll hook you up. And I also run an annual e-commerce conference over at sellerssummit.com if you want to stop by and say hello.
Sounds good. When's that coming up?
That is on May 3rd. Unfortunately, we already sold out for this year, but it is an annual conference. So.
Oh, congratulations for selling out.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Steve. And it's been a pleasure having you on. And I'd love to have you maybe back sometime in the future.
Sounds good. Take care, Alana.
You have been listening to the Talking Web Marketing podcast. For more information or resources on today's episode, head on over to talkingwebmarketing.com.